This is Gresh from the I Am CEO podcast, and I have an awesome guest back on the show today. I have Frank Goodman. Frank, excited to have you back on the show.
Great to be here.
Yes, absolutely. I'm super excited to have you on. And of course, before we jump in and talk about all the awesome things that Frank is doing, I want to read a little bit more about Frank so you can get a little bit more of a glimpse into what awesome things he's been able to accomplish. And for over 20 years, Frank has helped countless startups, small businesses, and Fortune 500 companies transform their establishment through business consulting, websites, and custom applications. Frank is an expert in creating user-centric web and mobile apps that align to companies' objectives and customer needs. His background includes an undergraduate degree in computer engineering with a minor in computer science and a graduate degree in systems engineering from George Washington University. And prior to working in the commercial space, he served throughout the intelligence community, helping companies like Booz Allen, Lockheed Martin, and Northrop Grumman meet agency objectives. Currently, Frank works running Bleeding Bulb Inc. and ROI Pros LLC. Bleeding Bulb offers custom applications, integrations, automation, and AI implementations. And ROI Pros offers a suite of SaaS tools and services to help business owners clear their plate of responsibility to focus on their high priority, high impact growth activities. And like I mentioned, Frank was a guest on episode number 48 of our I Am CEO podcast. And we actually had a really cool conversation where we all met in person with some previous guests. And it was episode number 101 of the CEO Chat podcast. And we even went as far back to talk about our retail jobs. I was at Circuit City, if I remember correctly. You were like at Radio Shack, if I remember correctly. But one of the things that I love about everything that Frank's been able to do is when we were going back in time, he was a first generation college student and he really has had that entrepreneurial bug since he was young from what I remember. So I'm excited to have you on the show, hear what other entrepreneurial things you're working on. Frank, are you ready to speak to the IMCO community?
Hey, let's do it, man. Let's do it.
Let's get it started then. So to kind of kick everything off, I know I touched on a little bit. Let's rewind the clock, hear a little bit more on what you've been working on, what got you started with all the awesome work you're doing.
Nice. Yeah. So as far as you want me to just start with?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So as far as me, I started in IC community, like Gresham said. So intelligence community, working for the alphabet soup. Jumping from agency to agency, always within the tech realm, but it was more consulting, leading different teams and things like that for enterprise-wide applications. At one point, I realized that, this wasn't going to work for me because, at the time I was kind of at Booz Allen. I did a quick project. They were able to make quite a bit of money from it. It only took me about 2 days. And when they told me what they made versus what I received, which was essentially just a high five, I was like, it's time for me to think about a different path, And so I'm also a person that's rooted in just being able to understand my impact, And so one thing about government contracting is a lot of times they'll win really large projects or contracts and have a lot of money associated with it. You'll put a lot of time, energy into your ideas, the thoughts, getting leadership buy-in, and all of these different things. And when new office comes into play, they'll toss it out, start all over. And so if you're kind of, if you kind of like to see something that you created, really, really get used in a way that it was initially imagined, sometimes you fall short there. So I looked at small businesses initially, and we were just trying to build mobile apps, web apps, anything that'll help a business grow, whether it be internet business, we would want to do that. But that's a service-based business. It's exchanging time for money. And so that's really when ROI Pros came into play. So, Bleeding Bulb was more of a tech shop where we were building web and mobile apps for other people. But ROI Pros became more of a suite of products where we were looking to leverage like SaaS tools to help businesses grow and wrap it into consulting. So that way, it's not so much about coming to us to build a custom tool. It may be to give you technology to kind of fit your process, to help you streamline your processes or leverage tech and different ways to help your business grow. But it was more about leveraging tools that we have created and we have access to instead of just always trying to build something custom.
Awesome. That makes so much sense. And I love hearing about, that progression and being able to kind of see that. And then too, that makes so much sense, like how those, I guess, seeds were planted in terms of like knowing your impact, as you said, like being able to kind of be aligned with that and working so hard on something. And then, like you said, I guess the office politics or whatever you might call it ends up happening where it doesn't go to the wayside. But now sounds like you've been able to kind of make sure that you are, able to make sure that impact is kind of seen through as much as far as possible. Yeah. So you kind of, I think, so ROI Pros is a little bit of a combination of both, right? So you're able to create or you've already built these products, maybe
Right.
even with companies, and then you're bringing that consultancy and showing them how to do it along with the actual product itself.
Yeah, so basically the whole premise of ROI Pros is business owners should stay in one quadrant, and that's high impact and high priority. If it's not high impact, high priority, and this is for business owners looking to grow, looking to scale. If it's not high impact and high priority, not or, they should not be doing those activities. You should be delegating, right? The only way to scale and grow is to delegate. And so our whole position is, okay, well, if you're looking to grow, you need to understand your process. You need to understand where these opportunities lie. And you need to understand how your days are being spent, how your time is being spent, right? Because you should be thinking, you should be focusing on things like maybe it's training, sales, identifying new opportunities within your market. You should not be doing some of these tedious, mundane tasks, nor should your staff, right? You need to have them thinking and focused on things that impact your bottom line, like growth activities, right? If you're looking to grow. And so ultimately, we understand that they also don't want to get involved in things that they don't need to. And that's a part of delegation, right? And so that's why the consultant part exists, because we could just say, hey, look, here are some tools that we have for you to run your business, just like a HubSpot you would do, or just like, a Salesforce would do, or whatever the case. But what we're saying is we understand like you shouldn't be playing in this stuff that much. Like it should be set up, it should be kind of automating your process, your business, and you should be able to move forward. And anything around that, like we will take care of those type of things, whether it be through partnership or whatever the case. That should not be on your plate. You should delegate those things so that you can focus on what matters the most to your business. So really, it's really about us redirecting their energy. But yeah, we have our own custom tools that we've built, no different than what you would consider like a CRM. We have schedulers. We have all these different things to kind of help facilitate your business. And we're also able to build custom apps because remember, naturally, we are a custom shop. So whatever our products don't offer, as we learn your business, we can add additions to it to make it more of a custom experience, or a more of a tailored approach to your business and what you do.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I imagine, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like, especially with Bleeding Bub, I'm guessing that you were having these conversations where people were working in the business instead of on the business and not realizing how that was blocking their opportunity to kind of grow and scale. So it sounds like everything you've been able to build, has come from maybe those conversations you were having with clients.
100%. I think so often when you're building these products, first, a lot of times when people build products, they don't go a lot of places, or even if they tell you direct requirements, they don't necessarily go where you want them to get. A thing that kind of, separates us, but they go into tech shops and the tech shop will build out your requirements, right? Like it based on what you're saying you want, they will build it for us. Well, because we understand business and we understand tech, that gives us a more holistic view. So when we're going to any situation and people are bringing issues or problems or concerns with their business or ideas, we're thinking about where are we trying to go with this? How does this impact your business? What are these other external elements that may exist? Like where are we trying to go, right? And then we kind of go down that path with them, right? We're not just saying, hey, give us a list of requirements and we'll figure it out. Because a lot of times when people come to you with the solution, it's probably not the right solution, right? Because they didn't properly assess the root. Sometimes they're just trying to treat these like,
Symptoms.
these little band-aid solutions of symptoms, but it's not the root, like a person will say, I need more sales. And they're not paying attention to what are you doing with the people you already have, right? That's low acquisition cost. I mean, acquisition cost is a lot higher than, handling the people that you've already done business with. So I think a lot of times it's just really having those conversations and asking the right questions to kind of get them down the path of where they need to go without thinking about tech, without saying, oh, but the algorithm, or oh, this new trend is happening, or oh, I heard about this. It's like you don't have to think and research about these things. You have a trusted partner now. We have technology, you can leverage it, right? And we're going to get you where you're ultimately trying to go because we understand your business.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you said that trusted partner because I think, like you said so well, like so many times there's things that are moving, there's trends, there's algorithms. There's all these things where you're like, you have to do this, you have to do that. But I feel like we sometimes can lose sight of like why we're ultimately doing them. And I love that question that you asked of like, where are you going? What are you trying to, what are you ultimately trying to do? Because I think we can fall in, I say we always fall in love with the how instead of the why. We like, okay, I need this
Yeah,
new latest technology, but we forget about the ultimate why of like why you're actually trying to even implement that.
absolutely. Absolutely. Happens all the time.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, and I love that you have that secret sauce as well too, because I think so many times, like, I don't know if you ever heard of this book called Range. Is one of my favorites because it talked a lot around like the world of the past was a lot more siloed, where you have your tech here, you have your business here, you have your technology, your HR is here. They're all in different pockets. But the world of tomorrow and the future actually belongs to the people that have a range of different experiences and perspectives and have that holistic view because the complexity of some of the problems needs to be solved by being able to have that kind of range of experiences and perspectives. So I almost wonder, is that in line with your secret sauce and align with yourself personally, but also the business that helps set it apart?
100%. I mean, you basically hit it on the head. That's really what it's about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. And do you find like a lot of the clients that you've talked to, or even clients that you work with, do you feel like they are seeing all of that, or if it's just like I need this Band-Aid, so please help me solve that there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the ones that come to you and just say, "Hey, look, I know something isn't right," you
Right.
know, but but it doesn't really matter how they come, it ends up the same way. Because when you start to have that conversation, if you understand the business, you know the most important thing to them, or one of the most important things is their bottom line. Like that money matters. They're not gonna exist without money, which means if the money is important, their people's brains are important, right? Which means their time is important. It all trickles down to, really trying to figure out what is the real problems within this business, right? So it doesn't matter if they come and say, "Hey, I know I just need this or I don't." Like, we will always offer, you know,
Mhm.
our input based on experiences, right? That we've all had. And they could reject it, and if they want us to just do exactly what they tell us to do, they will. But most people that come to us, that's not their mindset because they're in a growth mindset and they're looking to leverage what they have no experience in, right? They just know they need tech, right? But they don't know what tools they need. They don't know how the process should kind of work. And I think another thing that kind of sets us apart is a lot of tools will make you change your business for that tool. And we're not designed that way. Like, we need to understand that in order for any tech to work, that takes buy-in, right? And a lot of people don't look into the team buying in to whatever it is that you're trying to do as an organization. None of the tech matters. Nothing matters if your team isn't going to adopt it and actually live by it like you want them to. So many people spend so much money trying to just get these tools and they sit on the shelf because no one will use it properly, or there isn't proper training, or that you didn't do, So it's like part of what we bring is we need to understand where your team needs to be a part of the process so that we have the early buy-in. So when it's rolled out, they understand the expectations and how we're going to move because we've all talked about it. We said this is where we're going to go. And we realize that these are all pain points that's going to take us all to the next level. So as soon as we start to solve some of their smaller problems, and it doesn't always have to be big. Sometimes people think like, oh man, I got to change my whole business. And it's intimidating. You could start small. There's certain things that your team is wasting time on, wasting 2 hours on a day, 1 hour on a day, and it impacts morale. Like, people don't want to do some of these tedious things, and that brings down the energy, which impacts what they can bring to the table for you, which can give you ideas or it can give you energy towards working towards your ideas. But it's like, it's so important for you to be able to like really engage with these companies and not just understand ownership, but get them to realize whatever we come up with is nothing if we can't get your team in early and get their input and make sure that we're eliminating some of their issues because they said it was a problem, and just finding that balance, so that we could get buy-in and they could start to benefit from everything that we implement.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. It's so funny before we hopped on and we were talking a little bit. I said whenever I travel, I love food. And it kind of made me think about like kind of the appetizer. Like when you're at a restaurant, you get that appetizer, you're like, oh, this is really good. I'm really looking for the main course. And kind of that same buy-in where if we don't realize that you meeting people where they are, starting to solve whatever might be their 1 hour, 2 hour, whatever. I won't call them minor because it could be major, but it starts to create a little bit more, I guess, engagement and connection to like the thing that you're ultimately trying to solve. And we think so many times we got to go to 0 to 60, but in reality, it's going mile after mile after mile, and having those conversations, having that engagement, that buy-in, as you said so well, that really starts to, I think I won't say it seems like it doesn't make the tech. It seems like it makes it so that you can use it, because like you said, if it's just sitting on the shelf, it's not going to be useful. It's not going to make the impact, and ultimately, it's not going to impact your ultimate bottom line.
100%. And again, like people buy tools, people put process in place, their team is not on board. As soon as it just becomes tasks, you already are losing. If your team hasn't bought into the goals because they feel like you don't even have the process or the capacity or whatever to make them think negatively about where you're trying to go, right? Like the more that they're just going to say, this is just a job, I'm going to just do bare minimum, get by, and X, Y, and Z. But if they can see the path to it and the benefits and all of these other things, and they see that you're trying to make their days better, like that will motivate them. Like you will get a little push from them and not just feel so like I'm just an instructor, like it's a different business, which is the more of the growth mindset. You have to have everyone thinking about that goal. Everyone needs to come in thinking like, I know how I contribute, where I contribute, and I know what's necessary for me to make sure that we get there. Everyone has to think that way, not just like a CEO. So
Yeah, that's such a huge thing that you're bringing to these conversations, because I love that growth mindset. And I often will say, you forget about the human part of business. And I think anytime you're talking about technology and SaaS tools, you so often can get so obsessed with the technology, you forget about, again, the why, the human part of not just what this does, but like how are the people that are within the organization actually going to implement that? How does it help their lives to get better, let alone, the clients that you're trying to work with? So being aware of that is such a huge thing, because I think we can lose sight of that by the quote unquote sexiness of whatever it is that we're trying to implement.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Awesome. Awesome. So I wanted to switch gears a little bit, and I wanted to ask you for what I call a CEO hack. So this could be like an Apple book or even a habit that you have. What's something you lean on that makes you more effective and efficient?
I think it's important to always take a step back and realize how you're really spending your day. I think a lot of us, it's so easy to get caught in a routine and not realize what we're actually spending our time and energy doing. Because a lot of times, if we really kind of step back and do like a somewhat regular assessment of your day, and I mean, like literally, when you start what you call work or whatever, right? Like, what are these activities that's happening throughout the day? Like, really document and like take an assessment, and then you need to figure out, okay, is this high impact and high priority? Because that's telling you like, why are you, I don't care if you contract out and just get another human to do it, or you find ways with tech, but it's like, if it's not high impact, high priority as a business owner, you really should be challenging yourself. If you want to grow, you should be challenging yourself. So that's what I would say.
And that makes so much sense. As you mentioned, like a lot of times when you're making that transition, we you talk a lot around going from builder to architect, working more on the business rather than in the business. So many
Yeah.
times we have to realize what served us at that point potentially is not going to serve us to get to the next point. And sometimes that
Hmm.
only happens through those assessments, the documentation of understanding what you're doing, but being able to kind of filter that out and say, hey, just because I can do it doesn't mean I should be doing it. And if it's not, like you said, high impact, high value, I think you said, high priority, then you're not going to be
Yeah,
able to continue to kind of scale and move things to another level.
absolutely. Totally agree. I mean, yeah, we just have to be mindful of our resources. It's just like we say our goal is to get here, but half of our things have nothing to do with getting there. Like that's
Right.
just, you have to assess what you're doing, you know? Yeah.
Do you find that there's I guess, a regular period that people should be at least maybe evaluating that, having those conversations? Is there some like regularity that you've seen that has been impactful?
I think sometimes it's just based on the phase or the temperature of the environment, right? Like sometimes you realize your energy is getting low. Sometimes you realize that you just can see that you don't feel as productive. You're like, I know I'm busy, but I can't put my finger on what's being accomplished, right? Or sometimes it's your team morale. It's just like, man, like, you know, these people, like, I have to tell them every little thing. No one's thinking for themselves. Like, I have to tell them everything. I have to think about everything. And it makes you feel like you damn near should do everything. You know what I mean? Like you can kind of feel like that because you don't have certain things in place. Like you didn't properly define this, or you didn't properly, define that, or you didn't. set goes and they understand their connection or whatever it is, right? But it's like you check the temperature in the room. Like I don't think it's necessarily like a every week you check. It's great to think about it daily, right? At the end of your day, like think about what you accomplished. Like and if you're not accomplishing anything over the week, like there's a problem, right? But I don't think it has to be a time interval. It could just be a temperature check, But yeah, that's what I would say to that.
Yeah, I love that, and I think one of the biggest things around checking the temperature, literally, if you don't know what the number is, then you don't know where you're at. Then it's hard to kind of know whether you're high or low. So being able to kind of just gauge that and be aware that hey, like something is off, something's wrong. Like I don't know what it is, but I think that probably starts those conversations. Reach out to awesome people like you to be able to say, okay, like this is what's happening, this is what I'm feeling, so that even if you're so close to it, you can't necessarily answer it. You can have outside eyes to be able to kind of give you more insight.
100% because most of these companies, they're collecting a lot of data, but everyone's collecting data, but people aren't using it. They're not taking advantage of their data. There's a number will explain it if you know the right data to point to, right? Like the numbers are going to tell you everything. It's not just in finance, it's about productivity, it's about everything, right? Like you capture your KPIs or your metrics and all of these different things, they're going to tell the story. So you don't have to really try to figure out a whole lot once it's in place. You can see certain things happen and say, there's only a couple things that this could be, Like, and then you start to diagnose and you start to play around and figure it out. But yeah,
Nice. And this might be, part of that CEO nugget, a little bit more word of wisdom, piece of advice. I like to say it might be something you would tell your favorite client, or if you jump into a time machine, you might tell your younger business self. I wonder if that data part is a big part of that, because I'm curious, like, do you find that are people maybe afraid to look at the data? Do you feel like there's like some, apprehension from like being able to kind of look into that to see like ultimately this is where we're at. This is the temperature right now in your business, and maybe not want to face with the changes or adjustments that need to happen as a result to get to where you want to be.
I think a lot of times people are either overwhelmed or they may be a little intimidated
Mhm.
about going through the process of even understanding what to collect. Like
Mhm.
a lot of people aren't even collecting the data in the proper way. They're collecting data. They have a lot of data, but that doesn't mean they have the right data, right? Because you have to start with understanding what your business is and where you're trying to go and all the elements and things and inputs that go into you getting there. And a lot of people aren't really structured in that kind of way. They kind of look at the numbers. Am I profitable? Am I making money? Am I not making money? Are people showing up or not showing up? Like they look at very surface level things like that, right? And so I think a lot of times it's just them not understanding data and the way that data can be used to tell a story. That's not something that a business owner naturally does, in that kind of way, down to the smallest, piece of data. So I think a lot of times they just don't have it. The mind doesn't really wrap around it. Tech is complex. There's so many different tools. So even just choosing a tool is like overwhelming. It's just like going to a restaurant with 1,000 menu items. It's just like, yo, can you tell me the top six? And so it's like you go into this world being your own like tech advisor or your own this, and then the problem is when you have the person that like you have how you talked about silos before.
Yeah.
When you go to this tech shop over here and they say, oh, no, this is the best tool because of X, Y, and Z, they may be looking from a technical perspective, right? Then you talk about your next tool and now you're buying another tool. Then you're buying another. If no one looks at the bigger picture, right, you're always going to be put in a position similar to silos within an organization. You have different people talking different languages, like in totally different spaces, but you're all supposed to be working towards the same thing. You have to think about where you're ultimately trying to go to know how things connect to all go there together. Like you can't so I think people's approach is even off a bit in a lot of cases because they're just getting these silver bullets. Oh, this will happen in 30 days if I get it. Oh, that's a great message. Now you have 50 subscriptions and you're not using any of it because now that you have 50, you don't even know how they connect. You don't know how they do. So one's collecting data, this collecting data, but how do they talk and how do I benefit from that? It's like people don't want to log into stuff, man. Figure all
Yeah.
this stuff out. They just want to know the answers, you know, and focus on what they're good at. Like that's what we want to do. I want to do what I'm great at. And that's
Yeah.
people, or that's team building, or that's this. Live there, you know?
Right.
Let that other stuff go.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think it's so powerful in knowing who, to also let it go to as well, because like you want to make sure that whoever you're letting go does have that holistic kind of output or perspective to know like what's happening. And I think so many times one of my favorite books is the E-Myth because it talks a lot around like what
Mhm.
entrepreneurship actually is. But I almost wonder too, like as we talked about, like with data, technology, and all those being such a big component of business in the world we live in, that could probably be part of the new E-Myth where we didn't realize that we had that data that we can pull from. That's now part of the job of you understanding this. And I think those are some of the things that when you are, passionate about what you do, you don't realize that's a part of it. And doesn't necessarily mean you have to do it, but it does mean that you probably want to make sure that you at least have that strategic partnership so that you are aware of it and you are benefiting from it as
100%. Even if you think of a couple different situations, like you could think about maybe it's a store, right? Like, and weather impacts their business. Okay, if you know the temperature in advance because of the forecast, and you know you typically just scale down because you're like, oh, it's going to be slow. Why not think of when this trigger happens, then I need to put this in, I need to boost my online. You get, or I need to run this type of campaign. This day is, it doesn't have to be that, but I just mean in general, think of how your business is ran, not just process wise, but what impacts your business. It could be weather, it could be, holidays, it could be whatever it is. You can start to understand trend because a lot of times when people get a great customer, they want the great customer again, but you're not paying attention to the trends of all the great customers to find out where the similarities are to figure out like what is this real makeup, this persona, right? Like instead of dreaming your persona and going through these workshops and all of that, it's like the data is telling you that these people live like this, they are in these places, and they are like you have access to data that you, even if you don't collect it, we can scrape it. You get what I mean? Even if you don't want to scrape it, like it's just available. And even when people thinking about like ChatGPT and all, like okay, that's answering a question, but there's process that can go behind understanding your data and reports that could be quick against your data, not just asking this tool like that has all of these other people. Like you need to focus on your data. Like yeah, you want to also check these other things and get ideas and you're prompting against your business and tying it to your goals and the actual inputs of your business so that it can start making decisions and helping you make decisions, like that's how you leverage those type of things as an example. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, people sometimes just need a conversation just to spark that. Like, I didn't even know I could do that, right? I didn't even know that was a thing. I thought I just asked questions. And it's like, why are you asking questions to something that doesn't know your business?
right. Yeah. Yeah, that makes so much sense. And
You
that's where
know?
sometimes the marketing, advertising can play such a big part because it make it seem like you need this. But I say if you run your own race, you can't lose. But if you're not, running your race, you don't even know when those trends are happening. You're not looking under your you don't have the space, you don't haven't asked the
Mhm.
questions. It ends up being such a powerful thing. But I think that's such a huge nugget because I think so many times in business we can kind of lose sight of that. And it's great when you have, those partnerships so that you can lean back into that. So now I want to ask you my absolute favorite question, which is the definition of
Yep.
what it means to be a CEO. Our goal is to have different quote unquote CEOs on the show. So, Frank, what does being a CEO mean to you?
I think a CEO to me is a person that understands their people's why. They understand what drives their people. I think it's a person that understands their business and what drives their business, right? Like almost looking at their business as a person in a way, right? It's like so it's a person of understanding and that they understand everyone's drive in their system and their ecosystem, right? Like you understand everyone's drive because that's the motivator because you need them to be motivated to get to wherever you're trying to go. So it's the person that really has to be able to just understand where everyone wants to go and how that ties to where they want to go. And they could pull it together, if that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense. I love that. There's a quote that I always heard was Henry Ford's, but I guess it's not Henry Ford's, where he said, if I would have asked everybody what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse rather than the Model T that he came up with. But why essentially, and being able to kind of say it's not either or, it's that growth mindset you talked about. It's both and better. Like, how can we create this? Because I'm creating space and time to be able to come up with and pay attention to what's happening so that I can create that innovation. I think that becomes so powerful because right in front of
Yeah.
our eyes that we're missing. And that's really where the
Hmm.
opportunity is.
Absolutely. And I think people always have to dig past the money. Like that's easy. Anyone can say the money, right? It's usually more than that. What do you need the money for? You know what I mean? Like, I mean, because a lot of times I just think people And another thing I would say is assumptions. Some of the assumptions have to stop, and you have to focus on like, findings versus assumptions. And I think that's important as well.
Right. That makes sense. And I imagine probably that's a huge thing, especially around data as well. And being able, because
Yeah.
I think that when you think that, okay, this is going to happen, then of course you find the data to help support that, then that's not actually your findings. That's something that you wanted to, prove what you already thought that you knew.
Yep. 100%.
Awesome. 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 Well, Frank, truly appreciate that definition. Of course, I appreciate your time even more. So what I want to do now is pass you the mic, so to speak, just to see if there's anything additional that you can let our readers and listeners know. And of course, how best people can get a hold of you, find about all the awesome things you and team are working on.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I mean, I really just hope that I hope people found some value in this conversation in general. I love to, I'm naturally a person that seeks problems, love to come up with solutions and process. Like I'm a process guy by default. But yeah, I mean, we're a company that's here to kind of really be a trusted advisor, a partner with you. We're here along the way. We're not just gonna sell you a tool and just say, hey, good luck. This is something that we go in on together, right? Like we understand your business, we understand your path, and we walk that path with you. So we are a person that you or a company that you can kind of reach out to. And even if it's a call just to get some ideas, like we don't mind, giving a little time for something like that. But you can reach me at frank at roi4pros.com or go to the website roi4pros.com. That's ROIFORPROS. And as far as the tools and things like that, we can kind of discuss different tools. We could discuss your situation because I don't really like to talk about tools as much as, where are you and where you're trying to go. And then we kind of go from there. So, yeah.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. And we'll have the links and information in the show notes as well too for that and bleeding bulb as well too, so that everybody can reach
Hmm.
out to you, Frank. But one of the things that really stuck out to me, and I'm the king of butchering quotes, but like there's this Alice in Wonderland quote where it's like, "What lane do I take?" And it's it depends on where you want to go. And I think so many times we don't know where we want to go, so we don't know which lane to take. So I love that you're creating space and time and opportunity for people to have those conversations so that they can
Hmm.
take those steps and they do ultimately know where they want to go. So thank you so much for hopping on again, my friend. And I hope you have a phenomenal rest of the day.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks, Rose. Great talking to you again.